Good morning and good evening. Let us begin the Circle of Harmony. Thank you so much for joining in. And as we know, most likely, that the topic today is mindful listening. Actually, there are two topics, mindfulness, and listening, and how when listening becomes mindful, how much potential, expansion, growth, clarity is possible. So let's see how much we can touch today. And before we begin, invoking the divine's grace and presence as we begin the session, aspiring and praying for flexibility, receptivity, openness, and maybe mindful listening as we begin today. Because listening does change a lot in us if we truly listen. So this topic came about, I think, 2 weeks back when we were discussing about harmony and we started talking about, listening and how important it seems and how it seems we are not doing a very good job of it. Especially, when somebody says something and we react and then we wonder that why did we react? So, those things lead us to other things, which is good because then we begin to wonder and then we want to seek clarity and get ourselves rid of the things we don't want within ourselves. So, simple things like sometimes it's surprising. It was very surprising for me. I used to think, I'm very good at reading, like when I have to read text and all. And then I started noticing that when people read a lot of times, they just interchange words. Like if a word is starting with a similar, say, alphabet, 2 or 3, they would change it. When I would do transcripts, I was surprised to see that, I use that a lot rather than since, something like this. Like I was listening to a word, but when I was transcribing, I was writing something else which I had heard, but which the speaker had not said. So, those are the things again that kind of hit us. So before I share the readings and some quotes and all to help us expand our thinking and maybe wonder what's going on and get some pointers if possible. If any of us have anything to share on the topic about, do they think they're a good listener? What is a good listener? What could be mindful reading? Anything if you just want to share something as we are beginning.
Yeah, Taru, can you hear me? My
Yes.
throat is bad. Yeah. No, thank you so much for this beautiful topic because since some time I've been observing myself that I am not listening to people what they are saying. I just pretend. My eyes will be my eyes will be somewhere, my mind will be somewhere, but physically I'll be sitting. But sometimes I started feeling that I'm only more pretending than listening. Though if someone asks what did I say, definitely I would not be able to answer. This was going on in my mind that I thought, what makes me not listen these things. Then I understood that they are no interest to me. That is why I'm not listening. But sorry. But sometimes, even during our sessions, also, our mind just flips, not mindfully listening. So I understood. Then I wanted to find a solution for this. See, at least we can go and tell them, please don't talk to me all these. I will not be able to listen, which is not possible. But when we do something usefully, also our mind just flows. It just flies. It will be going here and there. So I hope this session will help me in some way. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Charuji. Yes, I hope so too. We all are seeking our own clarities and clarifications, and yeah, we do receive if we are open to following what is being said by masters and mystics, and the guidelines are there. And you're absolutely right that one realizes that one is not listening much. And even if somebody asks, what did I say? We would often be able to repeat what they said, and yet something in me is not listening. And I feel, there's another agenda that a lot of how I perceive the person to be. So if somebody is sitting in front of me and I have this perception that, I don't get along with this person, or, I don't resonate with their thinking. So there's something in me which is standing there resisting, rejecting what they are saying. And if, say, a fresh person would say the same thing, I would be like, oh, that's a good idea. So I've seen that so often in myself, so strongly that it shocks me that, am I this closed, or am I this stupid, or is this what I'm doing? Obvious things are happening in front of my eyes. So people are, even with their actions, probably saying something. But if my perception is, oh, this is a good person, or, whatever, I would not take that into consideration, and I will just ignore that. And then I say I live in facts. I live in, I'm an intelligent person. So my conclusion was that nope, no intelligence, nope, no facts, no, like so much more learning. And opening the eyes and ears is required factually. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very good starting point to at least know. A lot of times when we are even reading in the sessions, sometimes we miss something, right? Like we get lost. So can I read again? Or sometimes, when other is reading, we see they're interchanging words. So that means not fully there, not fully there, right? So even reading the text of say Sri Aurobindo, especially because his are long sentences, one sees how much one wanders when one is reading something that interests us. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, in last session also you were mentioning, just be conscious. Otherwise, if we slip one word, then you won't understand any meaning. Yeah, that time I understood,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was busy in, sending you thank you. I just missed that what you said. So after that, I had to watch the recording, which is very true. Yeah, thank you. And very often I also do, I will read one more time. I will read one more time. That is because, something in me is not very aware, not mindful. you know. Yeah. So many things, we feel that we are very saintly, we are very straightforward, we will follow everything. But when we look at ourselves very closely, we also have lot of holes.
Mm.
At least we know that we have lot of holes. We'll try to correct ourselves. Thank you
Mm.
so much.
I was reminded of this quote. It says, we have 2 ears and one tongue, which means we need to listen more and talk less. Uh, and, taking from this quote, if I look back into the past and, they say we shouldn't have regrets in life, but if there's any learning in life, I've realized that had I spoken less, it would have saved me so much more trouble. So I guess in that sense, also listening is such a skill which saves us from speaking, saves us from speaking nonsense so many times.
Sorry,
And
Deepa, can you be please bit louder?
okay, I'm sorry. Um, I think it's the hearing aid. Let me take off the blue.
Yeah, I could
Better.
hear perfectly, but yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
that sharp, but it was very clear.
Okay.
So,
I
yeah.
think Sharda ji is also having a cold, right? So her
Yeah,
ears
so her
also.
ears might.
So Shadash ji, I was telling that, had I listened more and spoken less, it would have saved me so much trouble, if, in my past experiences and interactions with people. Um, And also, I'm wondering, though I have not read up on this, I'm wondering whether, we should not get confused between hearing and listening, because these are two different skills. Um, there are a lot of times we hear, but we don't listen. And I think listening would not only be the physical aspect of, words going into our ears and we understanding what somebody is saying, but also I think there are so many other components of listening. Um, what are the thoughts of the person, what are the gestures of the person, what is the person actually trying to tell you. What a lot of times people are unable to express their deepest insecurities, fears, or feelings or emotions. And I'm wondering whether listening is all of this together rather than just hearing. um, and I think this is so true with a lot of our close relationships, because we understand people much more with whom we deal on a daily basis. And this is what we need to inculcate, not hearing, but listening.
Thank you, Deepa. Yeah, not getting lost in the terminologies, but yes, more inculcating. But I would like to disagree with something you just said. You said the people who we are closest to, we know them, we understand them. And I think I would absolutely feel that once when you stop, the chatter or the perceptions, then you realize that how you were understanding somebody so differently and how you don't understand. We have our own stories. Sometimes I feel, that genie in the bottle, that the genie comes out and he's so big, right? And how could that genie so big fit into that small bottle? Firstly, my head, how I'm making so many genies out of things which are not there, and how when I get mindful or I want to now have no drama, I can tell the genie, get back into the bottle, and it becomes that small and it's back in the bottle. So the power is in me, otherwise, I have created so many genies around me, so much phantom fantasies, and this person is like that or that person is like that. Deepa, when you had shared about, that example when you were talking about that somebody needed to lose weight, and when you suggested that probably they should have a healthier lifestyle, another person said that maybe they need to take a pill, right, to lose the weight, and how horrifying that suggestion was, that why would anybody say that? So, it was so interesting that just because I thought I know this person and this person knows me and it's a family member, why would they want that for us, right? Rather than, I don't know, and if the same comment would have been by somebody else, a stranger, I would have just said, yeah, that's also an option, but that's not an option for me, right? Like, we don't have to lose it. We don't have to say that, what are you saying? Like, have you gone mad? But that's what happens inside of us because we have a certain set of expectations, right? I know the person knows me. So that is why the listening or the talking has agendas, right? Like, I know, okay, and that I feel screws us up. Like, it has veils and it has all these, I don't know, things around us, so that because of that, we are not able to listen. And when we are not able to listen, because the people around us are the ones who give us the maximum teachings, right? Like, because they can see us, they can see our faults. But because I'm so step back, I'm so defensive that this person is always blaming me. I don't have to listen to anything he says or she says, something like this. I realize that I have done me a lot of loss of progress because I would shut myself to certain people and be open to certain people, and my loss. Yeah. Dia, you are unmuted. I don't know by choice or you
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to.
I
Yeah.
just want to share. It's actually very interesting topic. Sometimes I think we don't want to listen purposely. Like, for example, we would have our own interpretation of things. We know how to interpret this. We have already formed the opinion. And then on top of that, if someone is telling us anything, we don't want to feed any additional information and go by what we were already thinking. And also the agenda, definitely most of us have our own agenda, and If something we hear is contradicting our agenda or our preconceived notion, we don't want to listen. Probably that is also a case.
Thank you, dear. Just starting with the basic code that was on the poster for this thing, that mindful listening is listening without an agenda. Right? So, firstly, if we start recognizing that I have agendas, is a very beautiful first step that shows us a lot and lead us itself to where we need to be if we start being honest. Because somewhere there's a wrong perception in my mind that, I am holier than thou, something like this, not of that degree. But if I start seeing, oh, this is where I go wrong, or see, this is what I didn't do right, or, oh, if I'm so mindful, why am I missing this? Why am I missing that? Why couldn't I see this? So just questioning my own self, I think really helps me. So this recognizing of the agenda is really, really beautiful, and it leads us towards a lot of things. And there's another quote that the quieter you become, the more you can hear. So this silence aspect, especially if we are doing any self-development, if we want to truly know the silence aspect, banish all thoughts from thee and become God's void. This is from Savitri. So like this silence that helped me be silent. Too much movement, and that's why I can't read right, I cannot speak right, I cannot hear right, I cannot comprehend things right. So that's part of the issue. Yeah. Yeah, Cyrus, you have joined late, but anything on listening, anything you would want to add at this point?
Yeah, I joined a little late. Sorry about that.
No,
So, similar to, what you shared earlier, even sometimes I feel I have that agenda, when I'm listening, and then I've, already made up my mind that, this, and you tend not to hear, I mean, at least I do that. I sometimes don't tend to hear the other person's point of view fully, because I've already decided this is what I want to hear. So, this is an important topic, for my development for sure. In some ways I recognize that this is, and I've tried, but I think I'm not really very successful on it yet, because I still feel that, okay, I sometimes I'm not able to hear them. I mean, out, what are they exactly saying, because I've already decided this is what I want to do. So, yeah, this is something that certainly will benefit if I can, improve on this.
so
That's
as
my thought.
we, yeah, thank you, Cyrus, thank you. Yes, absolutely. So it's all a, progressive thing, that it's not that we can ever stop learning. And before I shared some readings that I found interesting on this to show us more light, I thought we'll just do a small 2-3 minutes exercise. If it's possible for us, if we can sit in a relaxed place and just close our eyes, just stilling the being a little bit, like just being more present. And now we can, if possible, become more conscious of the sounds around me. Like, of course, for you, the sound is me as well right now, but I'll be shutting up soon. But just for 2 minutes, if we can just hear what sounds are around me by being fully still, no judgments, no conclusions, just listening to whatever sounds I can around me. And now let's see if we can hear the sound of our breath. If we can hear our breath while we are breathing. Yes, thank you. So that was it, a very short exercise. So, a lot of people, they talk about white noise like rain and ocean and water. And yet I feel that if I am a bit here and there, and if I just still myself for 30 seconds and just listen to the sound of my breathing, sometimes, obviously we say focus here, focus there. But since the topic is listening, so if one can listen to the sound of their breath, that in itself too calms us down. Any sharings are welcome. And so I'll start with a few things that I have pulled out. Yes. Would anybody like to read this aloud for us? Otherwise, I will read.
Yeah, I can read.
Thank you, Cyrus. Please.
Yeah. The difference between listening and pretending to listen, I discovered, is enormous. One is fluid, the other is rigid. One is alive, the other is stuffed. Eventually, I found a radical way of thinking about listening. Real listening is a willingness to let the other person change you. When I'm willing to let them change me, something happens between us that's more interesting than a pair of dueling monologues.
Thank you. So I think this quite sums it up for what all we were discussing. So there's a difference between listening, and how Charuji so beautifully mentioned the word pretending to listen. And a lot of times we are not listening, right? We are just listening. We are not listening to know, to understand. We listen to reply so that we can reply. There's a quote somewhere here by someone who says that. But irrespective, so that is true that I pretend to listen. So one is fluid, right? Like you are open, you are willing to hear what the other is saying without any agendas. The other is rigid. One is alive. Why alive means it's open to changes. It's open to progress. It's open to be proven wrong. The other, like we were discussing, we feel we already know or we know better. We know how I should respond, and I also know how the other should respond. So, real listening is a willingness to let the other person change you. When I'm willing to let them change me, something happens between us that's more interesting. And I loved what he said, more than a pair of dueling monologues. So it's like one person is talking to himself, the other person is talking to himself, and they appear to be having a conversation. So true. A very nice way of putting it. And that also makes me think that, how we talk about like the first love that, you can never repeat it, or how true it is and how honest it is. And a lot of times in relationships, I've seen that even if things are not going good, there are people who say that, but 10 years back or 15 years back, or when I met, the things he or she said to me, I cannot forget that. So it's really interesting that initially, in the beginning of things, we are more present, right? Because we are still trying to understand the other person truly in our capacities. And then something in us does change, right? There is a connect that is formed, which changes something, which forms something. And then even if we are told like, 20, 30, 40 things, 100 things in contrary, that yes, you think that person is good or you think that person is bad, but these are 10, say, examples when he was not or she was not, but we are so, something had formed in that initial understanding, that rigidity, that we don't let go. So just becoming more conscious of it really helped me, and that's why I was just sharing that, sharing this. So yes, Deepa.
Now that you mentioned this just came because you spoke about how listening should be such that it should change us. The exact opposite sequence I was reminded of, without sounding too political. I remember there was this conversation. We were traveling to Nasik, and it was a big car, a big extended family sitting in, and suddenly the conversation went political. So there was my sister and mom who were speaking for Modi ji, and my uncle who's like a staunch Congressite, they're taking it up for the Congress. And in this whole conversation, so I was sitting behind. And I was just looking at this conversation, and I know maybe a few years back I would have also been so vociferous in my opinions and speeches. But I was looking at that conversation very quietly, and I saw nobody was listening. Everybody was talking. And the whole intention of the person talking was to change the other person, to change the other person's opinion, view, and to convert. And in this whole very, very engaged conversation of nearly half an hour, uh, I didn't understand what was the purpose, because each one had such a very strong opinion and nobody was listening and equally believing in what they said was right. So sometimes we talk so much but absorb so little. So I think now I have understood certain conversations are just about wanting to change the other person. And I think when this happens, just have Ganesha's big ears.
Yes, thank you. Nice visual. Yes, dear.
Yeah, I think when we hear such quotes, just Taru has shared the quote. So with that also, some people would use it on the other person to say that you should listen and you should change. No one is willing to listen themselves.
Yes, and especially if you have a young child in the house, he'll make sure that he teaches you this, that you need to listen. I keep listening to you. So, yeah, good learning. So, a very short thing from the mother, from the answers. So I'll just read it. It's very small. So somebody says, "Oh, sweet mother, teach me to remain unshakable when someone talks to me, because afterwards my mind wanders." So mother says, "Do not identify yourself with the conversation." So, the agendas come here, right? Who is talking to who? Someone is talking to me. Someone I like is talking to me. How I'm listening. Someone I don't like or whose opinion I don't like is talking to me. How do I listen? So, mother says, do not identify yourself with the conversation. Watch it all from above and from a distance, as if someone else were listening and speaking, and say no more than is absolutely indispensable. So, this saying, I think, is another agenda, but this tensing or identifying, if we can now slowly begin to even do that a little bit as per our capacity, that one person is speaking and one person is listening, there are no agendas, how different things would be. We cannot imagine this, we'll have to do it to find this out. I'll move on, and I am of course hoping that anytime anybody has to share, they'll unmute. So there's one more from the mother. So the question is, sweet mother, what should one try to do when one meditates with your music at the playground? The mother says, the music aims at awakening certain profound feelings. In listening to it, one should make oneself as silent and passive as possible. So, right, we're talking about listening. So, one has to make oneself as much silent and passive. Usually, we are very active, right? Because we are listening to respond or answer. And if in the mental silence, a part of the being can take the attitude of the witness who observes without reacting or participating, then one can notice the effect that the music produces on the feelings and emotions. And if it produces a state of deep calm and semi trance, that is very good. So for me, when I read it, so these word, of course, silent, we know, and yet we are not. Passive, again, like I said, was very interesting. Somewhere in our society, being passive is considered weak. I remember, growing up, I had given some exams in an institute, in Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, IIFT, for my MBA in Delhi. And there was something called GDs, group discussions. So I had not taken up any coaching. I got through so I didn't know too much about it except the fact that there are group discussions. And I had cleared some exams, and then it was the time for interview. So in the interview, they had different things like one-to-one interview, plus there were a bunch of people, 10 on each team or something, with group discussions. And man, that was something crazy. Like it was as if the idea was to just not let anybody else speak, and everybody is trying to just, I can't even explain it, but I'm sure a lot of us would already know how brutal and violent and insensitive. I don't know. I mean, for each his own, but this aspect of passivity somehow is considered like a weakness, which it's not, but maybe in some areas, I don't even want to go there, but that reminded me of that. And just reading further ahead, and if in the mental silence, a part of the being can take the attitude of the witness who observes without reacting or participating. How far am I from taking this attitude? Was a very beautiful reflection for me. A witness who observes without reacting or participating. While I'm listening, I am not reacting, I'm not participating, I'm just listening. I think this has the potential to change the whole way one listens. Yeah, pausing for any comments, any sharings. Moving on. So this quote, again, after the word silent, this was really interesting. So this quote from Alfred Brendel, the word listen contains the same letters as the word silent. There is a short video from Jetsunma, Tenzin, Palmo, in which she speaks about how the Dalai Lama used to listen. I've shared this once before, I remember, but taking an opportunity to share it again with us. And if you can't hear it, please let me know.
This is also part of the Tonglen, that when suffering comes to us, we open the heart instead of closing it. thinking that we're something unique and special because I'm suffering. Actually, in the whole world, there's so much suffering. We can identify with that. And also when we are in a situation where we are really encountering so much suffering coming in on us, and even if we have tremendous compassion for that, as many people do, we also have to learn how to let it go, how to evaporate it, how not to cling to it like a heavy stone inside us. Many people in the helping professions burn out because they bring in so much suffering every day and it just sits there inside them. They don't know how to deal with it. And this is why in Buddhism it is said the nature of the mind is both compassion and wisdom. Like the two wings of a bird. If we only have compassion and no wisdom, then we are overwhelmed by the sufferings of others. If we only have wisdom but no compassion, then it's cold and distant. We need both. The wisdom sees. Well, it's difficult to express, but it allows us to recognize that these events are not as solid and real as we take them to be. So in Buddhist parlance, this is called emptiness. Emptiness just means we give space. We give openness. So these things come in, but they don't stay there. They are able to allow them to also expand outwards. I mean, I think His Holiness the Dalai Lama is a very good example of what we mean here. Because, you know, every day people come to him from all around the world with their problems. You know, because they know he's in exile and he's very compassionate. So people from all over the world who have problems, they come to him. And when he hears them, you know, I mean, his heart completely opens and he's, you know, just crying away. And they're crying, he's crying, everybody's crying. I mean, he feels it so much in his heart. He knows what they're suffering. But then 5 minutes later, somehow he cracks some joke and everybody's laughing. And like the whole dark atmosphere has just opened up and lightened up. And when they leave, they're smiling. And they feel like they've put down their burden and he's allowed it to dissolve. That's his wisdom aspect. He doesn't end up heavily burdened with all the sufferings of the world. He feels it tremendously as his own suffering, but he can let it go. That's why he keeps going. That's why when people think of His Holiness, they think of his laugh. They don't think of him, you know, being all upset and crying. And so this is why meditation also helps us enormously, because it helps us to see our thoughts and our feelings are not as solid and real as we take them to be. We experience that. We experience the open, spacious emptiness of our thoughts and our feelings.
Yes, pausing here, and of course, we'll be happy to share the link if one wants to listen to it more. So this was important to me because I have recognized in my own life how sometimes we take certain things and hold on to them. You know, especially, I don't know, I think with women, I've seen this more that, you know, because somehow you know, they are supposed to be the receiving end, at the receiving end. So, you know, this was done to me, or this was said to me. And then you hold on to it for years and years and decades, that this was done to me or said to me. And it's not worth it. Like it's not doing anybody any good. And what is that feeling of being a victim getting me anything anyways? I mean, maybe time to let go of some things if we are holding to some things, and if not, more grace and power to us. while go on further.
Then
Yeah, this is something which was very profound. So, if anybody has the capacity, if they can read it for us, like we'll be reading 2 paragraphs, and if not, I'll read.
Yeah, I can read.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have noted much too often, I must say, that most of you do not listen to what I say. So much so that many a time I have answered a question in detail, and immediately after, someone or the other among you asked me exactly the same question, as though I had not said anything. And the phenomenon is explicable. Each one is shut up in his own thought, just as I suppose you are in the habit of doing at school, where you repeat your lesson to yourself, if you are attentive and hardworking, and don't listen to what the teacher is asking or what the other students are answering, and thus lose three-quarters of the advantage of not being alone in the class. Here, it is more serious, for I never give a personal, individual answer. I reply for everybody to profit by it. And if instead of listening, you continue thinking of what is in your head, it is quite obvious that you lose the opportunity of learning something. That's the first point. If you are here, well, first listen, don't think of something else. But that too is not enough. That's just the beginning. There is one good way of listening and many bad ways of listening.
Yeah, thank
I am
you,
also
sir.
guilty of that.
Yeah, thank you. So good that we recognize. So again, something that struck me was, especially here, was each one is shut up in his own thoughts. You know how when we are living everyday life, the topic is mindful listening. So that mindfulness aspect kind of we get hit upon every time when we are reading, listening, living, thinking, like we are just shut up in our own thoughts. And so much of life is passing us by. So just wanted to point that out. Any thought reflections are welcome, and this is where now Mother tells us about the good ways and bad ways of listening. So if anybody wants to read, yeah.
I don't know if any of you are so fond of music as to know how to hear it. But if you want to listen to music, you must create an absolute silence in your head. You must not follow or accept a single thought and must be entirely concentrated, like a sort of screen which receives, without movement or noise, the vibration of the music. That is the only way. There is no other. The only way of hearing music and understanding it. If you admit in the least the movements and fancies and of your thoughts, the whole value of the music escapes you. Well, to understand a teaching which is not quite of the ordinary material kind, but implies an opening to something more deep within. This necessity of silence is far greater still. If instead of listening to what you are told, you begin to jump on the idea in order to ask another question or even to discuss what is said under the false pretext of understanding better, all that you are told passes like smoke without leaving any effect.
Yes, thank you, Cyrus. This thing that if you want to listen to anything, Mother is talking about music here, you must create an absolute silence in your head. Like we can take smaller steps, not absolute, but at least some level of silence, some silencing that we can do. You must not follow or accept a single thought. That's what happens, right? That a thought comes and we start walking with it, and then we are no longer here in the conversation, in our lives. And that is why the importance of mindfulness. What is mindfulness? Not going away with the thought or coming back as soon as you realize you have already left. The body is here, I am somewhere else. So you must not follow or accept a single thought and must be entirely concentrated like a sort of screen which receives without movement or noise the vibration of the music. And she says this is the only way. There is no other way. The only way, Mata is talking about music, of hearing music and understanding it. So, if you admit, she says, in the least, the movement and fancies of your thought, the purpose of a thought, I feel, is to just take me away. So, if you admit in the least the movement and fancies of your thought, the whole value of the music escapes you. Here suddenly there was this visual that came to me that, say, if I have peas in my hand, right? Like peas, the vegetable, and if I were to put it in, I don't know, a thing which has holes, the peas, they are small but not that small, they will all just go down the drain. But if I was to put them in a strainer with thin holes, right? Then the peas would stay and then they are washed and I can use them. So it appears that because I am not if I am mindful, my strainer is sharp, my strainer has thin holes, and I'm able to catch more of what is being around me, what is being thrown at me, what is being said around me, implied or unemployed. I'm able to grasp more if I have a sharp mind. By sharpness, I mean mindful right now, not just talking about intelligence. So the mindfulness is about making one more present, more able to receive with more, I don't know, stitched together things so that I can hold to what is being said. I can take it in. I don't know, I digress, but yeah, something like that. So just taking it further and of course pausing after that. So if you admit in the least the movement and fancies of your thought, and fancy they are, we know, we can attest to that. The whole value of the music escapes you. Well, to understand a teaching which is not quite the ordinary material kind, but implies an opening to something more deep within, the necessity of silence is far greater still. So, if instead of listening to what you are told, you begin to jump on the idea in order to ask another question, or even to discuss what is said under the false pretext of understanding better, all that you are told passes like smoke without leaving any effect. Just taking it a bit further, similarly, when you have an experience, you must never, during the period of the experience, try to understand what it is. For you immediately cause it to vanish or you deform it and take away its purity. So, again, Mother is talking about non materialistic experiences. In the same way, if you want a spiritual teaching to enter into you, very important. So, if you want a spiritual teaching to enter into you, you must be absolutely immobile in your head, immobile like a mirror which not only reflects but absorbs the ray of light, lets it enter and go deep within, so that from the depths of your consciousness it may spring up again someday or other in the form of knowledge. So, although it is very contradictory, because when we listen, we really want to understand. But this I have seen, heard a lot of times. They don't try to understand, just take it in, just take it in. And when you will need it, that knowledge will come as if it was just waiting. Okay, now this is the time to understand this. A lot of times we hear things which we don't understand, and suddenly something changes, or we see something and we say, oh, this is what that person was trying to tell us. So everything is within us, although we are seeking more clarity, through these, even through these sessions, these books, our dialogues, and yet everything is within us if we know how to receive things. So Mother says, if you don't do that, you're just wasting your time, and into the bargain, wasting mine, of course. So that's a proved fact. I thought I had already told you this several times, but I did not, but still perhaps I didn't tell you clearly enough. If you come here, come with the intention of listening in silence. What happens, you will know later. The effect of this silent attitude you will recognize later. But for the moment, the only thing to do is to be like this, silent, immobile, attentive, and concentrated. That is all. So I found it to be very powerful and thus sharing. I'll share it again on the group in case they want to read it one more time. And I spoke too much, so pausing now, and hopefully some reflections are there. Anything we agreed with, did not agree with, like, did not like. Or we can just practice silence. I think that would be good.
So on the last part, um, again, it comes back to the point of, where you sometimes, I at least, again, lose concentration. Like even when we are having these sessions, or be it anything, unfortunately, my mind wanders, and it goes to this and that. And, so I guess it's coming back to the same thing, right? I mean, getting that habit of, being present, in a way, because even now, honestly, there are 3, 4 things on my mind, you know, and end of the day, I'm the loser, right? I mean, because I'm here, I'm not here, I'm there, I'm not there, So this is something if you can share something, or, how can you slowly, get, you know, or be more present?
So Cyrus, honestly, this has been shared quite a few times. We have all read and seen this. It's about being more present in general with everything, right? If I improve the quality, the accuracy of my being present in the moment, everything else will be taken care of. What does it mean being present in the moment? Can you tell me what do you think it would mean by being more present in the moment?
I mean, I would think like, I mean, the same thing, right? I mean, be listening. I mean, I mean, not like, trying to wander off, like,
Yeah, so say if you were to clean your room and your room had, say, 6 drawers or 6 wardrobes, okay? So right now, if you start to clean one, but suddenly a thought comes to you that no, no, but that wardrobe is much dirtier. My God, I also kept something there which might be spoiled. You quickly leave here and you go to that wardrobe. Then, as soon as you start pulling stuff out from that wardrobe, suddenly you remember, oh, in the fifth wardrobe, something somebody had given to me. It was so precious. Did I lose it or it is still there? You run to the fifth one and you start taking stuff out from there. And then you remember, but no, I started cleaning the first one. Let me clean the first one. And then this keeps happening. So if I'm using that example, it's sounding stupid, right? Why would anybody do that? Most of us would go sequentially from one to the second to the third to the fourth. But do we? So this is what it is, that doing one thing at a time and being fully present to it. So right now, say if the first wardrobe would have taken 20 minutes to clean, but because I keep wandering off, first of all the kuda is out, all the trash, all the stuff is out in a mess. And then it could take me 3 hours to clean that simple wardrobe. Story of my life. So there's no focus, there is no goal, there is no aim, there is no, if I were to remember that, I had, I don't know, like 50 gold coins or a very small diamond that I had put in this wardrobe, then those 5 things would not distract me. I would be like, oh my God, I put that, how much precious diamond in this wardrobe. I have to clean it and let me be fully present here. Then the interest comes. Then I would not say the interest varies, right? It doesn't wander because a lot is at stake. But usually, just like our lives, our interests are also very distorted, very dispersed. Not much is at stake. You know, the masters and mystics, they talk about this precious human life. How precious do you think we think it is? And it's evident from the lives that we are living, the desires that we are running after, knowingly or unknowingly. Not much precious. We take it for granted and we think we are here forever. So, mindfulness is like, say, again, we say start with your breath. Or maybe, that listening exercise that we just did for a minute. Be more present with the body. The great thing about the body is it's always in the present moment. The great thing about my breath is it's always present in the present moment. It's not in the future, it's not the past. So if I start with 5 minutes a day, we have said it a lot of times, and I know it's hard for us to follow these things because they seem boring until we fall in love with it, that we have to take ourselves back, that, oh, no, no, I don't want to do this right now. So these small, small things, where if I become more aware of, more conscious of coming back to the breath and all, this is a beautiful and a very easy, although seemingly boring in the beginning, first step towards being more present. What is the goal? Why am I doing this? And if it doesn't interest me, not to do it. So say if, for example, if I'm coming to a session and I see myself wandering off, let me tell myself I don't want to go to this session. I keep wandering off. That means it must not be of any interest to me. I'm reading a book. I keep wandering off. It's very interesting, yet I keep wandering off. Stop the book. Something in me would want to come back. If it was truly an interest, I'll be compelled to come back to those things, those books, and then warning yourself that now you better pay attention, otherwise I'll again not do it. So, some these things, how you tame, I don't know, how you're able to discipline children. One has to discipline one's own self with small, 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 small things. Each one would have different ways, but that in my opinion would be the first few things that I would be looking at. Being more present, because if one is more mindful, those other things, those are a byproduct, that then they start happening by themselves.
Yeah, thanks. On the same group, a couple of months back, I remember, someone had shared that, I mean, what we just discussed, that even when you're drinking a glass of water, be present in that. If you're making a cup of tea, be present. So that is fine. And in fact, I can even say that I've been following that on these small, small things. But say this kind of session that's what I came to, which is much longer, right? That is where I find it more difficult. Like say, the small, small thing that you do immediately, those things, now I'm trying to make an effort that, yeah, just focus on this. But something that's longer like this is where, it's a little difficult to, for over a period of say 45 to minutes to 60 minutes to, keep it
Yeah,
going, is what
yeah.
I
But
was
this
trying
is
to
how
say.
it works, right? See, like say a
Yeah.
child, he doesn't know how to write. So we'll begin with words, right? Okay, write 2
Yeah.
words. Okay, write 5 words. But if you have started with those small,
Yeah.
small things, it's not possible that if you're doing it with some sincerity and honesty, the durations you will soon see will increase, right? So this
Right.
is the way. And like everything takes time, right? This too takes time and this will
Yeah.
increase. Yeah.
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 Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you. So it's already 11:30, like for me, and 9 there. So we will end the session here. Any reflections now we'll take up next time. And let's see if we want to continue with the same topic or take a different one. So, and please feel free to post anything on the group if there was anything you would want to share with all of us. So thank you so much for joining in, for staying till the end, and thanking Grace, thanking the Divine for their presence, their guidance, their words, their teaching, this breath that is keeping us alive. So praying and aspiring for more receptivity, more mindfulness, more wisdom to do the right thing, to do the thing which is for the good, and to recognize, to be able to recognize what is good, what leads me to confusions, and what leads me to clarity, and to be able to follow that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank